All right, so this is the Cardio X overview. We're going to go through the format, the block, the protocols, make sure you guys have a full understanding of what we're doing in this round and how to make sure that you're productive and safe and efficient and you're going to crush it, right? All right, so supersets the protocol for Cardio X. There are actually 6 exercises, so 2 exercises back to back, 45 seconds without a break, and then we've got a 15-second rest in between. All right, so the supersets, it's the 2 of them together. Now, we're doing 3. 45 seconds each. There's a lot going on. Then we repeat that whole thing a second time. So there's a lot going on. So the first one we're going to do, Cam's going to help me show what you're going to look for as an instructor. All right, so I'm going to get down here with her. Go ahead and rest at the bottom so we can make sure we can take our time doing this. Now the setup for this, we're looking for 2 90-degree angles, which means the knee is right over the ankle. The hip and knee are in alignment. Bring this back. I'm going to show you a cueing error that you want to keep an eye for. So move this leg back further than you need to. Now, this is going to be more comfortable for someone in particularly because it's easier, all right? As soon as I make her bring that knee up parallel with her hip, this is going to be harder. So we're only talking about the original setup now. We want to kind of understand the way it's supposed to look, and then we'll get into some of the changes about it. All right, so now when she gets set up, she's going to go into 2 90-degree angles. Now lift your body off the ground. This is the starting position, okay? So this is where she's going to generate power to initiate that upward momentum. So let's go ahead and see a couple reps. Okay, so we're going to break this down in a couple pieces. So first, let's start with the foot that's leading, okay? When she comes up and lands, she's landing on the ball of her foot. So let's go take a look at that real quick. She's landing soft, and then the leg as a natural shock absorber takes in the weight, and she settles back into the bottom, which is the starting position. All right, now the other piece of this is the leg that's actually coming up. So left leg right now on Cam is generating the power. The right leg is going to see it through. So the right leg is creating some upward momentum. Let's go ahead and see a couple of those. That's helping throw her body weight up. Now, depending on the range of motion for her, that knee can come super high or it can come just parallel. So let's see one as high as you can get it and show you the difference. Above parallel, if you guys can catch that, and then just go to parallel. They're both great. Now, with this right here, so the standard motion or the standard movement is to create a plyometric force to go up. The hands aren't real significant. We're not really focused on what the upper body is doing. As long as it complements that movement, I'm throwing my weight up, and then that you're landing safely. Now, big no-nos. No one should be landing on their heels, okay? Make sure they're not folded over the front, so if they're not able to keep their chest up, I should be able to read Cam's t-shirt. As soon as I don't see the t-shirt, that's a red flag for me, and I wanna make sure I'm gonna slow them down and get them refocused. That's the standard. Now, when we talk about the regression, so we're gonna scale it back a step. We're gonna take that plyo piece out. It's the same setup. She's gonna stand up and go real slow-mo on this. Okay, you can see Cam is alternating her arms. Again, the body's natural inclination is balance. So it's gonna figure out on its own how to keep this stable and strong. She's dropping down into that 2 90-degree fix. Chin is up, she's breathing, and again, the chest is up the whole time, which means you can read that t-shirt. All right, now, let's say Cam's a rock star, which you're a rock star. Okay, so what we're looking for is that I might have her come down to the bottom, and right before she generates that force, I'm gonna give her a 2 or 3 second pause at the bottom. So she's in that 90-degree lunge. Everything's going to be burning. That lactate's going to be building up. Then you release her. So it's almost like a build-up. She's going to generate tension, and then she's going to fire. 45 seconds of this, okay? So this is a monster. Now, in the workout itself, go ahead and relax. We're doing 45 seconds on the left and 45 seconds on the right. Rest is needed. Form first, then intensity. Now, the next exercise is going to be the double airborne Heisman. This is a P90X Classic. Let's go ahead and see a couple of those. I'll let her demo it. Got perfect lines. She studies this stuff. Okay, so go ahead and relax. Now what we're looking for, go ahead and come to the right side and freeze for me. So let's break this down in a piece. So there's a double, I'm gonna help you balance. There's a double hop in the middle. Then she brings this knee up. She's activating her obliques. Balance, balance. These are natural, okay? She's got good lines, but don't focus on this. Now go ahead and relax. She's gonna do a 2-step in the middle, go to the other side. Cam's actions are very crisp. Not all your clients are going to be this awesome at this move. So we're going to go ahead and dial it down just a little bit. She's still going to focus on the oblique crunch. Look at her form. You can still read her shirt. She's exhaling at the right time, breathing at the right time. It's a slower stutter step in the middle. Go ahead and relax. Slow it down. So the same foundational stuff we always talk about in the certifications and all the reinforcing on content online. First thing you want to do is take out that ballistic piece. So take out the plyometrics, reduce the range of motion, and then, use your sound judgment. So double airborne Heisman, then we get into the squat jacks. This is another P90X classic. The setup for this is the tricky piece. People just get crazy. Feet together, it's a little bit narrower than shoulder width, and she's in a good seated position. Now, if we can catch this, we got lower back here. We've got good lumbar curve in the back. Back is upright. She's actually a little bit more in depth, which the further she reaches her fingertips in behind her head, the more advanced, because she's exposing more of the obliques, and this is going to cause a little bit more of a struggle for her, especially for her to stay upright. Now, the move itself, go ahead and give me a couple reps of the bottom end. Hop out and stop. Okay, this is perfect because Cam's giving an example of someone that's got a little bit of a knee dysfunction. If you can see from where we are, the knee is on the inside of the toe. I'm going to ask Cam to drive that. She's shaking, man. We just got done doing a killer workout. Go ahead and relax. So as she hops out, you're going to see that the knees are going to start to toe in a little bit. That's an indicator of you want to keep an eye on that. The severity of how much that knee valgus happens, that's what we want to pay attention to. So for Cam, I'm going to have her do it again, but reduce your footprint. So make it a smaller box. So you're only going to go out about 1.5 feet. Then stop. Go out one more. No, we're already starting to see a correction. So don't let someone get so crazy wide that they're doing this. It's going to be their inclination because they want to turn it up and they want to impress you and everything is going to go great. The other big thing, no interlocking the fingers behind the head. Just fingertips on the ears is good enough. And chest up again. So let's see the modification for this. So we're going to regress now. And all she's going to do is step out. Now, her staying in this squat, she's still activating hams, glutes. Quads are active depending on how high her hips are. She's going to feel more quad burn than the relationship between the glutes and the hamstrings. Everything else is still intact. Now, if we want to make this harder, we're going to set the client a little bit deeper into the squat itself. So go ahead and get really low. Just a couple of these, I promise. So now her range of motion, her hips are a little bit lower than before. I don't want her head coming above this level. So imagine she's got an invisible line here. That's harder. When she needs a rest, if she's a fire breather, I'm going to make her stay down there. You don't get to stand up. So that's go ahead and relax. So that's going to be the modification and the progression for the squat jacks. Then we're going to finish with the jump knee tucks. This one's so much cool, that old continuity P90X stuff in there. The idea of the jump knee tuck is to get the heart rate throttled. All right, so we want to really get that anabolic effect. We're beyond aerobic at this point. All right, we're already into the glycolytic and phosphagen energy systems. What we're looking for is form, and you'll see in the video that we give targets. It's a coaching opportunity. 45 seconds will destroy anybody if you're doing this nonstop. So let's start out and we say, hey class, we're gonna go for 5 with a 5-second break. That's your prerogative and you can do that. Feel for your class, get an idea as to what you're doing. So let's see a couple jump knee tucks. And then go ahead and relax. The only requirement for that hand is it's a target. You do not need to strike yourself, right? It's a guide that you're hip height. So I want to come up hip height. When she lands, if we can take a grab her down here of her feet, let's go ahead and just do a couple. Do one at a time. Now on the feet, go ahead. She's landing again, ball of her foot, and settles in. Lumbar curve is still intact, so she's not landing on her heels. When you see clients take that step backwards, they're landing on their heel and it's going to cause lumbar curve problems. So that's the full out. Now the modification, she's going to get the same kind of depth. It's the same depth. It's the same integrity in the back. I can still maintain that level of intensity even without the hop. Okay, nice job. All right, the last thing we got on Cardio X is going to be the lateral swing jump. This one's actually kind of fun. This one's brand new. So the setup is the same. Feet are a little bit narrower. Settle into that seat. The arms provide the momentum, so she's going to use that as an upward projection. Go ahead. And the feet and the quads are acting again as a shock absorber. So she's going to come up, watch where her chin is. This is a great coaching example too. Stop right there. You see how she's lifting her chin? I would actually have her, there you go. Keep your eyes forward. So I want to make sure she's got a good line. Keep an eye out for people with that cervical pinch. So focus in front of you a little bit and let's see a couple more. Land soft. Believe it or not, this is the break in this whole block. This is the easiest thing to do. All right, and with some modification, we're going to go ahead and we're going to step it. The upward momentum, so we're still using the arms, even though we're not generating upward force. It's causing the heart to work harder, and we're still getting that level of intensity in. You can narrow the footprint, you can widen the footprint. This is pretty versatile, all right? So you guys make sure you're focusing on the integrity, add intensity when appropriate, and then make sure everyone's just having fun and being safe. Thank you. All right. Good luck.
Here's your lower strength overview. The protocol today is a drop set. This means that we're going to start with a weighted exercise, lose the weight, and follow up with a body weight exercise. It's really challenging. 2 identical sets, and we bring this block home with a double maximizer at the end. We're going to start off looking at the exercises with dumbbells. If you use a different piece of equipment, you can skip forward now. You ready, Ron? It's a goblet squat, one of my favorite squatting exercises. The setup is really important. It's not really tricky, but it's important that you get them in the right position right from the beginning. So you want to cradle the dumbbell, bring the elbows close, feet about shoulder width apart. From there, everything else is easy. Squat. Push the hips back, allow the knees to track forward over the center of the feet. Range of motion, well, it depends on their flexibility. They can drop butt beneath knees. For most people, you might want to recommend stopping butt right around knee height. If you want to regress this move, it's really quite simple. Use a lighter weight or maybe even lose the weights. I do recommend, if they're not using any weights, that they still use their arms, maybe crossing in front and lifting the elbows high, because it gives them the same effect and the same benefit of the goblet squat, which is great posture. It forces your class to actually lift the chest. Once we're done with this, we lose the weight and we go into a jump squat. We drop down, cross the arms, and then jump up. Now, the point of differentiation here is that when they sink down, you want them to freeze in the bottom position. So you don't want them to bounce in this move. You want them to freeze, hold it, and then drive from the legs as they jump. So hold, and then try to get as much height as possible. The modification here, if you want to pull it back, is squat, and then rise up on the balls of the feet so the heels lift up. So it's like a precursor to a jump. These are the first 2 exercises. All right, so let's take a look at the second 2. The first one is an alternating lunge complex. Dumbbells, light, moderate, maybe. Depends on the strength of your participants, and sometimes it can vary from guys and girls in your class. You start off with a backward stepping lunge, followed by a side lunge, and then stepping forward into a full lunge to the front, and then do the other side. Things to think about here. Oops, sorry, man. Things to think about here is stride length. It's really important, and that's the most common thing I see in class, is that my class participants don't step far enough. So really encourage your class to take a leap of faith and really step back far. So what you want to be looking for, you can drop the weights for now, man, is as they step back into a lunge for me, please. You want to have the front knee roughly at a 90-degree angle. It's okay if the knee travels forward past the ankle slightly, but you want to have roughly a 90-degree angle, and the range of motion is you want the front thigh to be roughly parallel with the floor. You also want the back knee to be just behind the hip. Gives you better spinal alignment. And you can also check range of motion with knee in line with ankle. Sorry, you can come up, man. In the side lunge, show me a side lunge. You step out to the side. It's also important with the stepping distance. Chest needs to be square to the front. Knee needs to be tracking over the foot. This foot pretty much stays planted. That's it. Forward stepping lunge. Good thing to check here is check their knee alignment, that the knee is actually bending right over the center of the foot. It's really important. Once people get fatigued, what happens is the glute starts to disengage and the knee can start traveling inwards. So encourage them to gently push out towards the outer edge of the foot. Keep the glutes engaged. If you want to regress this move, it's really quite simple. Once again, you would just eliminate the weight or shorten the range of motion. We move on. From here, this is a fun one. It's a jumping squat lunge, really challenging. So we start off with jumping out into a squat. From there, we jump into a lunge, back to a squat, back to a lunge, other leg, and repeat and repeat and repeat. The point of differentiation here is not so much about height, how far off the ground you can come, but it's how deep you can stay in the legs throughout the work. Really challenging. Modification for this would be just step. So squat, step back into a lunge, squat, and alternate. Nice job. Awesome, thanks. As I mentioned earlier, this block is brought home with a double maximizer. Really challenging. 2 minutes of work with only 30 seconds of rest in between. And what we had is the power speed skater. You've probably seen a speed skater before, but maybe not quite like this one. This is one of my favorite moves. It's really cool because it incorporates so many different aspects of the lunge. Okay, from here, you're gonna jump to the side. I'll move out of the way. It's got long legs. Now the point here to really make to your class is to make sure that when they land, they stop. They absorb the impact into the leg, they sink forward, and they stop the move before they launch off again. If you want to make the move harder, what you can encourage your class to do is push off further, jumping a little bit further. But the technique is pretty much the same. As you want them to freeze, absorb the weight into the leg, check their knee alignment and so on. And then there's one more option, and this one is you can take a little bit of a break. This one is really, really challenging. We add a little bit of a hop as we switch directions. The move is the same, and you want the class to feel the same. The challenge comes from them jumping more up, so the trajectory changes and they're jumping more up, and they have to absorb more weight into the landing leg as they sink down, so it makes the move more challenging. Should we try it? Let's do it. So you jump up and across. A couple of technique tips to think about. That's awesome. Is as they land, make sure they're tipping forward at roughly a 45 degrees. They're maintaining their posture by pulling back, and you can rest. Rolling the shoulders back, getting a little pinch between the shoulder blades so they keep the chest open, and then really absorb the landing into the leg. So they always need to land with a soft knee. And that's your maximizer. You feel it? All right. Good job, man. Here's your lower strength with barbell and plate options. So we're going to start off with the goblet squat. I'm going to show an option at the same time as Ron. So if you're using the barbell, a couple of different ways of holding it. How we prefer to do it is grabbing the bar. It's almost like a narrow bicep curl, bringing the barbell up just above the collarbones. Really important point though is that you make sure that your class participants are gently pulling the elbows forward, and this will really encourage them to keep the chest up. If you're using a plate or double plates, just stack them on top. Same thing, keep the plates right on top of the collarbones, elbows pull forward. Starting position, feet shoulder width apart, chest up, midsection is really squeezed tight, and then it's just a matter of squatting. Pushing the hips back, allowing the knees to track over the center of the feet. Really important points here. Keep the weight in the heels, keep the chest lifted, so keep a good squeeze between the shoulder blades so the chest remains proud. Modifications for this, lighter weight, maybe even no weight, but still encourage your class to have their hands close to their chest or maybe even cross over and bring the elbows forward, and also shorten the range of motion. A squat can be done, we say butt to grass, but you can also shorten the range. It all depends on the mobility of your class members. So a good range is maybe butt to just above knees or knee height. Since we follow that up with a bodyweight exercise, we lose the weight and then we go into our jumping squat. Come down, cross the arms, and then jump up. Things to focus on here is good range of motion as they sink down, and most importantly is the freeze at the bottom. So they want to freeze for maybe a second or so. So there's no bouncing motion. They take that out, really absorb the impact into the legs, hold it there, and then explode up and look for as much height as possible. You feel it? All right, so we're moving on. Next, we have an alternating lunge complex. I'll show you with the plates at the same time as well. So we're going to start off with a backward stepping lunge. Stepping back, followed by a side stepping lunge, stepping out to the side, and then a forward stepping lunge. Things to keep in mind here, the most important thing is really stride length. That's the most common thing I see in class, is that the stride length is often too short. So I'm going to ask you to do me a favor. I'm going to ask you to step back and let's demonstrate this proper stride length. So it's a big stride back. You basically want the front knee to be right above the ankle, roughly. It can be a little bit in front. You want the back knee to be just behind the hip, chest up, and try to stack the shoulders above the hips. Range of motion is front thigh parallel with the floor or back knee in line with the ankle. Continue. Go on. Side lunge. Keep the chest square to the front. Keep the chest lifted, so it's good to think about having a pinch between the shoulder blades. Pulling the elbows forward slightly also assists in lifting the chest. Make sure that the knee is tracking over the center of the foot, and then a forward stepping lunge. Good thing to keep an eye on here is the knee tracking over the center of the foot. So basically the knee should be bending in the same direction as the second and third toe. As they drive back through the heel, keep the chest up. If they are using barbells, a good coaching tip or a good instructional tip is to make sure that they're resting the barbell on the meaty part of their upper back. Not too high up on the neck and not too low. Nice job. We lose the weights, and then what we go into is the jumping squat lunge. This one's a real challenge. We jump into a squat, back to a lunge, back to the squat, and then back into another lunge and with the other leg. The key focus here is actually staying deep in the legs. It's not so much about height, it's more about deep range of motion. Otherwise, the technique is the same in the squat and the lunge, but they need to stay deep in the legs. Options here is just a squat, a backward stepping lunge, followed by squat, alternating legs. That's it. All right. As I mentioned before, we bring this block home with a double maximizer. The double maximizer is a power speed skater. There's a few points of difference in this one. Let me demonstrate. So we jump across. What's really important is how we absorb the weight into the legs. But you know what? I've got a better suggestion. Why am I demonstrating when I have a perfect role model right here? Let's get Ron to demonstrate. So here, we start off by sinking into the legs, jumping to the side, absorbing the weight into the leg, and this is where there's a big point of difference. You want your class to actually freeze the move, absorb the weight in, so sink into the supporting leg, keeping the chest up, tipping forward at a 45 degrees. So the power comes from that absorption of weight into the supporting leg and then the drive off. So you maybe even want them to hold for a second or two. If you want to make the move harder, encourage them to push off further. So a bigger or longer lateral leap. And then there's one more way to make it a little bit harder. And that's we add a little bit of a jump up. So we change the trajectory up. This forces more weight in the landing. So you sink deeper into the leg, absorbing the impact, and that's good. If you want to take this away and regress the move, it's really quite simple. Step and back. Step and back. I really encourage that you tell your class to focus on the balancing aspect of this. If they take out the jump, really focus on the balancing aspect. If they need to, they can touch their toes behind. And that's your lower strength. Here's lower strength using tubing options. We'll start off with the goblet squat, and this is really the only exercise that we can use tubing, but I'll get there in a second. The trickiest part here is actually how you set them up. Notice how Ron is bringing the tubing over his foot underneath. So this is the anchor point. The anchor point goes under, over. He pulls the weight up, or the handles up towards the chest. Here it's a little tricky and you'll find your class do different options, but you want the tubing to be on the insides of the forearms, the insides. Hands up, elbow slightly to the front. Starting position, this is actually an important point. Depending on the resistance that they've chosen in the tube, it might be a good idea to tell them to set up their stance before they actually set up the tube or anchor the tube under the foot, because if it's a really strong tube, it's going to be hard for them to move their feet wider once they've got themselves into position. From here, chest up, nice brace in the midsection, we perform a squat. Butt goes back, knees track over the center of the feet. Keep a nice good brace in the midsection, chest up. Encourage your class to gently pull the elbows forward, and this is one of the main benefits of the goblet squat. It's one of my favorite moves, is it actually teaches people to keep their chest lifted in the squatting action. Looks good. To regress this move, shorten the range of motion or lose the tube. Then we go into the body weight exercise. This is a squat jump. Quite challenging. There's a couple of main points of difference here. We squat down, crossing the arms, and then we jump up. The main point of difference, though, is the pause at the bottom. We want a good range of motion, but that's different depending on people's mobility. We want them to drop down with their butt somewhere around knee height. If they have the flexibility and they can keep their heels down, they can drop deeper. But you want them to freeze in that position. So they go from that loaded position and then jump as high as they possibly can. It's not necessarily about completing as many repetitions as possible. It's more about the challenge of height, coming from that loaded position and then exploding up and getting as much height as possible. Really important that you encourage them to land with soft knees, absorbing the weight, sinking down and freezing, and then moving up again. If you want to regress this move, simple, squat, rise up, and it's like a precursor to a jump. You just rise up on the balls of your feet, lifting the heels off the floor. Looks good. All right, the second set of exercises is an alternating lunge complex. This one it's hard to use a tube for this, so I recommend you go without any equipment and just do body weight. The complex itself starts with a backward stepping lunge. Big stride length back, come forward, light tap, out to the side, back in, and then forwards. Let's take a closer look at stride length. That's one of the most important things that you can teach your class, is that they get a good stride length. Step back. Do that for me again, stepping back. You want to look at the front knee first. You want roughly a 90-degree angle here. The knee can travel forward slightly of the ankle, but never up to the toes. You want to keep it slightly behind. The back knee, as you see here, his back knee is just behind his hip. Range of motion is front thigh parallel with the floor, or you can check their back knee and make sure their knee is roughly in line with their ankle. The side lunge, stepping out to the side, really important here, and you'll see a lot of rotation, so you want to encourage your class to stay square to the front. The stepping foot, slightly angled, and the knee tracks over the center of the foot. Chest tips forward to roughly a 45 degree. Keep the shoulders back, so keep a little pinch between the shoulder blades so they keep a nice open posture. Step back, and then step forward. Here, good thing to keep an eye on is their knee alignment. The knee should be bending in line with the center of the foot, basically in line with the second and third toe. Try to get them to stop with roughly above the heel or above the ankle. It's okay if they travel forward slightly, but it needs to be a long stride length before they push back. That's it. From there, we move on to a jumping squat lunge. This is a really tough one. We start off with a squat, jumping out into a lunge, back to a squat, back to an other lunge, other leg. Point of difference here is not so much about height. This exercise is about keeping the depth in the legs. So you want to constantly keep a good knee bend, so you're building lots of pressure through the quads and glutes. Besides that, technique-wise, same technique for the squat, same technique for the lunge. If you want to regress this move, it's really, really easy. All you do is take out the jumps. So you perform a squat, backward stepping lunge, squat, alternate other leg, backward stepping lunge. All right, to bring this block home, we have a double maximizer. 2 sets of 60 seconds work with a short recovery of 30 seconds in between. What we have is the power speed skater. Awesome move. Another one of my favorites. Really athletic, really strong, but also really challenging. So to perform this move, get people started with their feet roughly hip distance apart. And it's a big lateral jump to the sides and absorbing the weight into the leg. And the point of difference in this exercise is the actual pause. Once they land, you want them to absorb the weight into the legs, make sure they're maintaining their posture, shoulders back, body tips forward to a 45. And then from that hold, you want them to explode and drive off in a lateral movement. You want to make the movement harder, you encourage them to jump further. There's also another step where you change the trajectory of their jump, get them to jump a little bit higher. So you can get them for the distance as well, but jump a little bit higher. And the benefit of this is that it gets more weight into the supporting leg upon landing. So they absorb the impact into the leg, pause, and then explode off. To regress this move, straightforward and simple, step, step back. Encourage your class to focus on balance. Balance is really, really important. If they need to, they can tap down, but otherwise step and try to find their balance. Great exercise. And that's your lower strength.
All right, overview for upper strength. Cam's going to help me demonstrate all the details of this block. Okay, so we got some cool things to show you, and we got an exciting protocol. I always like the Matrix ones. We got Matrix Plus in this one, which is where we start out with one exercise for 45 seconds, take a break, then we do 2 exercises, take a break, we compound. So we add that first exercise throughout each block, and then at the end we're going to reverse it, but we'll get into that through the sleeve. There's other details for that. So we're going to start first with the kneeling back fly. All right, so the focus on the upper this time, obviously, we're working on shoulders and back. All right, so we're going to focus first on setup. So go ahead and drop the weights real quick. I'm going to not wear her out if I can help it. All right, so go ahead and start from an upright position. So if I'm doing this slowly, and I have my folks get set up, I'd say get into 290-degree angles. So you're going to go down into a kneeling position. Knee is right over the ankle. The hip is right over the knee. The back foot's just relaxed. They're going to have some, they'll have a preference. Your clients, that's not make or break. You might see some people come up on their toe. Go ahead and go to your toe in the back there. Whatever they're comfortable with. I prefer the top of the shoelace, which like Cam was doing. Now, once you're in this position, this is when I would have Cam grab her weights. She starts in the upward position. And then all she's going to do is add like a 45-degree lean into it. Let me get out of her way. Okay, now what we're looking for, so go ahead and drop your chin a little bit. Always remember to keep the chin about a fist's width away from the chest. You don't want to do that cervical pinch. She's got a good lumbar curve here, so she's flat and she's stable. Before she initiates this exercise, she needs to take a breath and train her midsection to tighten up before she brings it back. All right, now this is a back fly, which means we need to stay low. Go ahead and give me a couple more. She's leading with the elbows. Imagine you're running with the elbows first instead of the wrists. What that's going to do is that's going to help you focus a little bit more on the lats, mid-traps, and rhomboids. That's the focus of this exercise, not coming up and wide. Now I'm going to demonstrate. I know you're not supposed to go the don't do this, don't do that route, but I want you to see what wrong looks like. Go ahead and go high like the shoulder fly. The difference here, okay, you're going to see these are on plane with the shoulder. A lot of people that don't have that physical awareness, they don't have that kinesthetic awareness yet to be able to differentiate back from shoulder, especially if they're weak in the back. You're going to see the higher row first. And if your clients that are going that high initially, drop the weight. Demonstrate. So one, remember the cueing technique. So one, you've got verbal, talk them through it, show them. So monkey see, monkey do, and then you've got that tactile piece, go here. So make sure that they're focusing on mid-back first. Okay, so once she's set up, let's see a couple reps at speed. Okay, her eyes are trained down by her foot. At the bottom of this rep, she relaxes the back. So we almost let the muscle go ahead and extend. There you go. And then she contracts the mid-back. Don't be surprised if there's a little bit of an upward jerk as she goes. What we don't want to see is rocking and rolling, so give it like a throw. There you go. When you see the lower back coming into play and we're using the spinal erectors for this, that's not the direction we want to go. It's okay when you get tired. It's the end of the set. You're fatigued. If you get a little bit of a pop, that's fine. But make sure they're just not being really destructive on the way they're doing it. All right, so you're going to notice this time Cam had her right knee down, left knee up. As you go through these sets, rotate through. Just gives the knee a break, whatever they're comfortable with. And again, it changes the focus just a little bit. It's not going to kill them if anyone's resistant to it. It's your call, but we prefer just to change it up so that you're changing that gait focus. All right, then we're going to go into upright rows. All right, so this has a recipe to really mess some people up if you're not observing what some of the key points are. Now, before she gets set up again, she's stable and strong. She's soft in the knees. Feet are about shoulder width, maybe a little bit wider. Now, the track of movement is as close to the body as you can. The emphasis is the anterior and medial delts, so I want to focus here. Now, as she comes up to the top of the position, depending on her range of motion, these dumbbells are, I like to put my hands on there so that my hand makes contact. There you go. The elbow is leading the shoulder versus, my hands are freezing, sorry, versus the elbows being down, okay? So when I see elbows high, I know she's got an appropriate weight. I know she's got good shoulder range of motion and that she's safe to do this exercise. So go ahead and come down to the bottom and relax. When she relaxes here, she's not going to keep tension the whole time. Don't be all resistant to the whole thing. Come to the bottom, take a breath, hold it, and then go ahead and do the contraction at the top. Okay, now the modification for this. So let's say you've got a client that comes in and they're like, got a bad shoulder, rotator cuff, sports injury, stud, D1, slipped in a hot tub. Who knows what we're dealing with? So when you're dealing with one dumbbell, what this is going to do is it allows the safe zone for the shoulder. So remember, we've got red zone, yellow, and green. So the more the shoulders are in or out, the safer and more compacted the shoulder is. By using one dumbbell, we bring the shoulder in a little bit more, and it really takes the stress and pain that might be in there with anyone that's had slap tears, rotator cuff injuries, strains, sprains, all those things that are going on. So try this as a modification for anyone that says this hurts, and they'll know it right away. Now, the only modifications for this, other than going to a single dumbbell, would be really reduced weight. So knock that down as much as you can. Anyone that comes to you and says, hey, I've got an issue with my shoulders, you're probably not going to want to do this exercise at all. Anything that brings that shoulder up and out of the girdle itself. So make sure, again, you're understanding your clients, if they've got that junted chin forward, so we're looking at upper cross syndrome, anything like that exists, you need to look at your clients and make sure that they're safe to do this. There are other modifications we can do. Protein content's got more on that, but we can find other ways that you can bring shoulders into this other than this exercise. All right, so then the last one, we're gonna do staggered push-up. This is a cool blend because we're kind of bringing in a wide push-up and a military push-up into the same exercise. Now the setup, she's gonna go into a full plank. All right, so what we've got on full plank, before we start, the connect checkpoints. So we've got her neck, shoulder, hips, knee, and she's driving her heel back, and it's a perfect straight line. This is a strong power position right here, okay? Now her hands, this one is close. This is gonna be the military action. When we say military push-up, we're talking about tricep. When we say wide, we're talking about the clavicular preference on the pec, okay? So go ahead and drop to the bottom, just stay on the floor and relax. Go ahead and relax at the bottom. So I'm not trying to burn her out. Now you can see here, the hand is a little bit lower than the shoulder. That's safe for the shoulder action. This one is real tight. The closer the thumb is to the pec, the harder this is gonna be. So if you got a client that can't push themselves off the ground at all right here, I'd have them bring this hand out just a little bit, and that will help shift the preference of shoulder to tricep or tricep to pec, sorry. So for the workout itself, we're doing 5 reps. So she's gonna knock out 5 reps best she can. If I had my druthers, she would hit chest to floor every time. This is a good time to talk about modifications, right? We're gonna drop to the knees. All right, so after 5 reps, we're gonna have her change the hand position. So now this one is wide and the other one is the military. Now, how much she projects her hips forward is how hard this is going to be or how easy it can be. All the way forward, leaning into it is the hardest because we've got more body weight in there. And as she comes back, that takes some of the weight off and shifts it to the legs. So go ahead and let's just see a couple reps of this. Chin towards the floor. Again, we don't want to see that cervical pinch. After 5, she would go ahead and rotate over. Just do 1, 2, there you go. So we're able to activate the upper pec, lower pec. And again, remember, you can't specifically train these things. It's not like it's an upper pec exercise. There's no such thing. We just do a preference. So there's a little bit more focus on the upper versus the lower. And we're actually blending a little tricep in there by bringing the military in. So you can get properly smoked if you're doing this, right? Okay. So remember, this is the matrix protocol, which means we add an exercise each time. After we've done that first block, the first half of this section, this block, we reverse the order. You'll see that in the insert, and you'll see it in the workout itself. So there you go. What'd you think of upper? She loves it. I love it. Hope you guys love it. Have a good time.
All right, team, this is the X core block, and our protocol is the Matrix Plus. In the Matrix Plus, we're gonna have 2 sets of work. On our first set, we start with 1 move, and we do it for 45 seconds, and then you get a small rest. And then we add on another move, and then you get a rest, and then you add on your 3rd move. And then you go into set 2, and you're just gonna reverse the orders of the moves. So you have 3 moves in this X core block. Let's show them to you. The first move, you're down on your back, knees are bent, feet are on the floor, and they're called reachers. So really, I want you to focus on your neck, get that apple underneath there, and reach for your heels. Height is not what matters, but I want you to engage your core and really go for it. Use your intensity. Ellen's doing the modifications with her hands behind the head. Focus here is on releasing your shoulders from your ears and just using your core for the work. Move number 2. Arms are gonna go behind your head. Don't grasp your head, just let them lay there softly. And they're called rocky sit-ups. So we're gonna get up and do a twist front back and back down. So it's a regular sit-up, rocky move with a twist. And I want that twist to focus on your core rotation. So you're gonna focus forward and back on each one. Ellen's has a little bit longer legs to make it a little bit easier to get up and down. Move number 3 is called a scorpion. We're gonna get into a high plank. Ellen will show you the modification on the knees. We're going to cross over, opposite knee to elbow, and then here, flexed foot, open up and squeeze from the glute. The focus here is on engaging that glute, not so much opening up. And then you rotate and alternate the other leg. Cross over and open up like a scorpion would with a flexed foot, squeeze your glute. set, you're coming in crossing and opening up. And you alternate that with the Matrix Plus protocol. On that second set, you reverse the order of those moves. That's X Core.